In the last video, we have seen how Latour challenges the traditional view of subject and object within Western philosophy. He's suggesting a philosophical view in which subject and object are so intertwined that we can no longer distinguish between them. In this video, I am focusing on Latour's source, so to say, the philosophy of Michel, who influenced Latour a lot. Above all, they share two main views. First, the view of science as a formal agreement, and second, they both advocate a kind of return to religion after the declaration of the death of God by Friedrich Nietzsche about 1.5 centuries ago. For both Serre and Latour, science doesn't convey absolute truth, but is the result of a contract, a formal agreement which decides the definition from which to start as well as the tools to use. For example, in this sense for them, science is not different from a courthouse where people gather to decide the truth. Scientific truth is the result of a decision, nothing more. Then, both Serre and Latour affirm that to be able to take care of nature, we must retrieve a religious sense of life, so to say. They both underline one of the possible roots of the Latin term for religion, that is the meaning of attachment. In this sense, being religious means being attached to something and hence to care for something. If we were not attached to something, we would not care for it. So for both Serre and Latour, we must have a religious approach to nature, meaning we must retrieve our sense of attachment to nature to be able to take care of nature. Now let's examine Serre's point in more detail. He affirms that in the West we have lost nature because we have forgotten nature. Now, how is that possible? Well, for Serre, this is clearly shown by history. Throughout history, we in the West have considered war the engine of history, the tool that caused big changes, the transitions to other epochs. Serre observes, we have always considered war as a conflict between two main parts, but we have always forgotten a third part, namely the world, nature. Let's consider all damages that wars caused to nature throughout history. It is as if humans had unconsciously declared war against nature. So nature is the third part in the conflict we have forgotten. So for Serre, time has come to take care of this third part, nature. Now the question is, how should we take care of nature? For Serre, the answer is by stipulating an agreement with nature, what he calls the natural contract. By becoming a part of the contract, nature ceases to be the lifeless and indifferent object among humans, as it was conceived throughout history and as it emerged during wars, but now becomes a subject, someone who has rights in the same way as us. But why a contract? Well, Serre observes that nowadays we are silently waging war against nature. Silently because through our economic systems aimed at maximum profit, we are so exploiting nature that we are almost killing it. However, strictly speaking, for Serre, we are not waging war against nature, but exerting limitless violence on nature, which is worse. Why? Serre notices that every war is preceded by a declaration of war, that is a law that established what is allowed and what is not. So he argues war is a way of limiting violence through a contract. While violence has no limits, war does have limits, the limits set in the declaration of war. But we only need a contract. We not only need a contract to limit violence against nature, we need a contract to actually prevent violence against nature and take care of it. Society itself was born out of a contract, thanks to which humans stopped waging wars against each other and started living peacefully in society. So Sar's point is, let's make a contract with nature as well. For him, it's as if we should restart history again, this time including nature. As history, human civilization arose out of a contract. So now we have to make a new contract, this time including nature. This time, nature, far from being a mere object disturbing human activity, becomes a moral subject, like us, that is someone with agency and who has rights. That the world, that nature is a subject, we can infer from the fact that the earth is trembling, that it is reacting to our violence, that it is suffering. The earth is no longer a passive object, but instead, by reacting, influences us. That's why subject and object are intertwined for Searle, in the same way as Latour. But how should our new relationship with nature be based on the natural contract for Searle? For Searle, the natural contract must be based on one main principle: love. That is, love of the world on the one hand and love of humanity as a whole on the other hand. Our relationship with nature, for Searle, should set aside mastery and possession in favor of admiring attention, reciprocity, contemplation, and respect. Making a contract with nature may seem something too abstract, something for philosophers outside of the world, also because you might say nature has no voice. How can nature actually make a contract? You might ask. Well, we can see here the potential of philosophy, what Searle would call the potential to anticipate the future. What Searle had imagined is now becoming reality. In 2022, legal rights were granted to Mar Menor, a saltwater lagoon in Spain polluted by nitrogen fertilizers by nearby farmers. Mar Menor became the first ecosystem in Europe to be granted a status comparable to that of a person. A growing number of countries is following the example of Spain. Among them are Uganda, Ecuador, New Zealand, India, and Colombia. To mention another example, in 2023, Panama gave rights to sea turtles to protect them from pollution. Once again, from this we can see the power of philosophy to change society. Far from being something abstract outside of the world, philosophy proves to be the most tangible thing in the world, what actually makes the world move.